Happy September, everyone. This month on the podcast, we will be diving into the works of Kristin Hanna. However, for the first week, I like to review the books that I read last month. So we're going to be looking at the 8 books that I read in August. Starting with book 1. The first book I read this month was The Rage of Dragons. If you loved Red Rising or the fast-paced, action-heavy book, then you need to pick up The Rage of Dragons immediately. I've heard so many good things about this book, and it did not disappoint. In this book, Tao, the son of the town sheriff, for lack of a better word, has been training to join the military. Everything is going well for him. He's found the girl of his dreams, and after fighting in his first battle, he's decided maybe the military really isn't for him. That is until Tao is warming up a nobleman and he injures him. As a lesser, this means he would be hanged. His father steps into Tao's shoes and instead challenges one of the most powerful men in the kingdom for a blood duel. His father is killed, and from that moment forward, Tao is bent on revenge against the men who killed his father. This book keeps you on the edge of your seat, and it doesn't disappoint. My favorite part about this book is that it has a matriarchal system, and the power is with the women, which is awesome. I rated this book 5 out of 5 stars for pure enjoyment factor alone. Here's a quote from the book. He was not the strongest, the quickest, or the most talented, not by any measure. He knew this, and he knew he could not control this. However, he could control his effort, the work he put in, and there he would not be beaten. The second book I read this month was Letter to the Luminous Deep. This book is a cozy letter writing fantasy where 2 characters are looking to find out what happened to their siblings who've gone missing after a tragic accident. This book takes place here on Earth, but everything's underwater except for a small little island. So everyone lives on boats, or one of the main characters lives under the ocean. This book was a perfect combination of mystery and fantasy. If I had one complaint about the book, it's that it's just a little bit slow. Otherwise, it's a great journey. I gave the book 3.5 stars. The listen is amazing. The audio cast was great. However, again, the pacing was just a little bit off. Here's a quote from the book. Instead of reading further, I hope you will return this letter to its envelope, or better yet, crumple it into an abstract shape that might look at home on a coral reef. The third book I read this month was How to Solve Your Own Murder. Annie has just been called to a meeting with her great aunt Frances to discuss her inheritance. However, on the way to the meeting, Frances dies, and in order to win her inheritance, she has to solve Frances's murder. So Annie and her uncle Saxon are racing each other to solve Frances's murder. This thriller mystery has 2 timelines, one in the present and one in Frances's past. This book was so fun and entertaining. I rated this book 4 stars. It's fun, and I think you would enjoy reading this book if you liked books like the Weston games or the Inheritance games. Here's my favorite quote from the book. If TV has taught us anything, it's that the murder rate in small villages is disproportionately high. The fourth book I read this month was As Long as the Lemon Tree Grows. This book was heartbreaking, but I'm glad I read it. In this book, Salama is trapped in the city of Hamas during the Syrian Revolution. The city has been under siege for months, so conditions are dire. Salama and her sister-in-law, who is now 6 months pregnant, decide they need to leave. The story was so important. I remember the Syrian Revolution occurring when I was in college, but I knew little to nothing about what was going on. It's terrible what the government was doing to these people who just wanted their freedom. This book also was one of my favorite romances. It was just so pure and beautiful. I rated this book 5 out of 5. However, be sure to make sure your triggers before reading this book. Many people die and are treated poorly during the novel. Here's a quote from the book: "Just on the other side of safety, not freedom. I am leaving freedom behind, and I can feel the earth's grief when I get out of the car. The tired weeds try to encircle my ankles, begging me to stay. They murmur stories about my ancestors, the ones who stood right where I stand, the ones whose discovery and civilization encompassed the whole world, the ones whose blood run through my veins. My footprints sink deep into the soil where theirs have long been since washed away. They pled with me, 'It's your country. This earth belongs to me and my children.'" The fifth book I read this month was an arc called "And the Sky Bled." This book is a multi POV environmental fantasy. It takes place in a country that is overrun by a powerful yet dangerous substance called calor. It's damaging the people, yet they rely on it to grow their crops and power their technology. The bulk of this book takes place near an island of Tamoja. Zane is a leech who works for the slumlord Dev to pay off a debt to him. Iravan is a slum leader and is trying to keep his people alive in the worst conditions. And Anastasia is the daughter of a council leader who is fighting against the slum leaders to get them out of her city. This book was full of political intrigue and mystery as the three separately try to find the hidden secret of Tamoja that could change everything. I'm not including a quote from this book since it is an art copy and it might change. However, this book is set to be published on October 15th, so be looking for that. The next book I read was actually a reread of The Way of Kings. I am gearing up for my read of book 5 of the Stormlight Archives. This book series has truly changed my life. Brandon Sanderson is a genius, and there's truly no fantasy series better than The Way of Kings. I have an excellent memory, so I don't often reread novels. However, this book had so much going on, and actually, it was my first Cosmere novel. So, going back and reading it has helped me to remind me of all the small little things that were going on. This book follows two main characters as they struggle through their challenges and uncover secrets. Kaladin is a young man who trained as a surgeon who once fought for Amaran's army. However, we find him at the beginning of this book as a slave who is just about to give up. And the other main character is a young girl named Shalon who's trying to become a ward to the most powerful woman in Roshar named Yasna Colin in order to steal her soulcaster to save her family. Of course, with 1,000 pages, Sanderson also weaves in a number of lovable characters, but these two are our main characters. This book is just stunning, and if you've been waiting to read this series, now is the time. There are literally thousands of people reading this book right now since the fifth book comes out in December. So you can join with us and get that read or reread in to prepare yourself for the next book. If I could give this book 20 out of 10 stars, I would. But the next book is so much better. Guys, I'm just stoked. Here's a quote from the novel. "And so does the destination matter, or is it the path we take? I declare that no accomplishment has substance nearly as great as the road used to achieve it. We are not creatures of destinations. It is the journey that shapes us. Our feet, our strong backs from carrying the weight of our travels, our eyes open with the fresh delight of the experience lived." The seventh book I read this month was A Sorceress Comes to Call. This was my first Kingfisher novel, and it won't certainly not be my last. In this novel, a young girl has grown up with her mother, the sorceress Evangeline. She's not allowed to be her own person. Her mother doesn't let her shut the door or go to school or talk to people, and sometimes she even takes control of her body. When Evangeline loses her benefactor, she has to leave their home and find a rich man to marry. Hester is an old spinster who is just enjoying her life when Evangeline and her daughter land on her doorstep. Evangeline is trying to marry her brother. This was a two POV novel that switches between the two women living with this sorceress. My favorite part of this book were the interesting characters. Each was so well written and relatable. I absolutely adored them. I also love that there's a second chance romance subplot between two older characters. I love seeing that in novels, and I hope to see more of that in the future. I rated this book 4 out of 5 stars. The magic was interesting, and I do love a bit of old forgotten magic. I also thought there was an interesting take on an old tale. Here's a quote from the novel. It was a strange reflection that, like Hester turning her cuffs on her gowns, you were somehow allowed to be poorer if you were rich than if you were actually poor. I was able to sneak in one last book this month, and I actually have the physical copy. Would you look at that? A physical copy of a book. This book is Lore Olympus, and it is a graphic novel, and it's a Hades and Persephone retelling. The art in this is stunning, and the story is really captivating. I'm looking forward to read more of it, and I wish I had more than just the first book. Nobody told me I'd want to read all of them all in one day. This is a very short read. It will keep you interested. I would rate book one 4 out of 5 stars, but that's because we haven't gotten into the good stuff yet. I think it's going to get so much better. So if you haven't checked out Lore Olympus, make sure you do. Since I wasn't able to read that many books this month, I thought I'd end this video with a few of my September hopefuls. I'm excited for 2 releases this month. First, TJ Klune's sequel to his book House on the Cerulean Sea called Somewhere Upon the Sea. This book is being released on September 6th, and if it's anything like the first book, it will be cozy and charming. The second release I'm excited for is Richard Osman's new book, We Solve Murder, that is being published on September 12th. Richard Osman writes my favorite murder mystery series, The Thursday Murder Club, and I think this book will also be exceptional. I'm also working on my reread of the Stormlight Archives, so I will definitely be reading the second book and maybe the third book in that series. If you want to know what else I'm going to be reading in September, make sure you follow me on Instagram or Goodreads, or I just started a Fable. I am According to Your English Teacher, and my name is Sam Gunther, and you can find me on all 3 of those platforms. Also, please make sure to give this video a like or make sure you subscribe to the channel. All of these things will help people find my content and help grow our community. Again, thank you so much for being here. We are going to be looking at Kristin Perrin all month. She's one of my favorite authors and one of your favorite authors as well. So we will be looking at The Four Winds, The Great Alone, and The Nightingale this month. So make sure you tune in and be looking for those videos. If you subscribe, they will show up right in your inbox. Hope you have a great day and happy reading.